I'd like to welcome everyone to Positive Coaching Alliance's Coffee with Coaches. This is the first time we're doing this event here in Chicago. We've done it in a couple other cities, and I'm going to go to bat and say that we have the best panel here. So appreciate the coaches being with us this morning. And everybody in the room, I appreciate you being here this morning. I know it's Monday, I know it's early, but I can guarantee this will be the best start to your week that you could have had. For those of you that are new to PCA, thank you and welcome. I'm excited to have you here to learn more about what we're doing in youth and high school sports across the country. For those of you that have been longtime friends of PCA, welcome back. We thank you for your continued support. In just a minute, I'm going to introduce PCA's founder and CEO, Jim Thompson, who's going to give you more details about how PCA was started and what our vision is for the future. But first, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what we're doing here in Chicago with PCA-Chicago. We're currently in our 4th year as a chapter. We're currently partnered with over 75 schools and youth sports organizations where we're doing over 150 live workshops for coaches, student athletes, parents, administrators, all ensuring that we're using the sports experience to develop better athletes and, more importantly, better people. This year alone, we'll train close to 5,000 coaches that will then reach and impact 50,000 youth playing sports in the Chicagoland area. The success here that we've had in Chicago over the last 4 years, we have to thank a lot of our local board members. We have a local board of directors here in Chicago, and we have a number of them here in the room this morning. So if I could ask our local board members to please stand to be recognized and get a round of applause from everybody. I'd also like to thank one of our National Advisory Board members who is with us this morning, Glenn Sugiyama, who is the Executive Vice President for DHR International. He heads up the global sports practice and has helped PCA's growth across the country by introducing us to sports leaders and coaches across the country, including Coach Brey this morning. So thank you, Glenn. I know I'm the last person you came to see to speak, so I'm going to wrap this up in about 20 seconds. I'd now like to kick things off by introducing our first 2 guests. We're lucky enough to have Dave Revsine from the Big Ten Network to lead us through this morning's discussion. Dave, you know, is the lead anchor for Big Ten Network. He's also the author of the forthcoming book, The Opening Kickoff, The Tumultuous Birth of Football in Our Nation, and that's going to be available August 1st, so I encourage everybody to pick up a copy. Dave's going to start us off by interviewing PCA's founder and CEO, Jim Thompson. Jim, who is the author of 9 books on coaching, parenting, and other topics in youth and high school sports, founded PCA back in 1998 out of the Stanford University Athletic Department. I'm going to let Jim tell you the rest of the story. So please welcome Dave and Jim to the stage.
Jason, thanks a lot. I was all excited about my 1 book, and then Jim's got 9.
You're younger than I am.
Yeah, right. I don't think I'm going to write 8 more. Well, let's talk a little bit about PCA. I actually had the opportunity to read through some of your books, and the background story of this organization is really fascinating. Give everyone here who might not know a sense of where the idea came from.
It came from 2 places. When I was in college, I decided I wanted to drop out of college. I told my mom I was going to do that, and she said, if you do that, I'll never give you another dime. So I had to get a job. I couldn't let her push me around. I ended up getting a job as a teacher aide in a school for emotionally disturbed, behavior problem kids. These were kids whose behavior was so bad, they were bussed into a separate school in St. Paul, Minnesota. They could not be handled in the regular classroom. And the principle of the culture of that school was relentless positivity. There was a control so kids didn't run wild, but within that, everything they did that moved them in the direction we wanted them to go, they got reinforced for. And if you've ever gone away and if you have potted plants in your house and you don't have somebody come in and water them, you've gone for a week, come back, and what do? They droop. These kids were droopers. And they got this diet of relentless positivity, and they just blossomed. We were able to send them back to the regular school, and thrive there. Fast forward, then I got married. My son is in 1st grade. I'm a business student at Stanford, and he starts playing soccer, basketball, and baseball. And there is so much negativity; it's unbelievable. have kids crying at t-ball practice because their dads are on them. So it was really a combination of those two experiences, seeing what relentless positivity can do for kids, and then seeing what that intermittent negativity did. There's more to it than that, but that really was the genesis of it.
Okay, so that was what got you interested in the idea of how can we make coaching more positive. But how do you go from having that idea, from seeing that this construct that you were observing with your son wasn't working, to where you are right now?
Well, one of the wonderful things about Positive Coaching Alliance, we're trying to change a major institution in this country. We don't think of youth sports as a major institution because it's so decentralized, but it really is. And that requires a movement of lots and lots of people. So one of the things we've done is we've looked at, we have some of the top sports psychologists in the country involved with us to help us put together our program. We take the best practices, some of the greatest coaches in the world. We've got 4 wonderful ones here today. Phil Jackson's our national spokesperson. Doc Rivers has been involved with us for a long time. So one way of thinking about what we do is we take these great ideas that are available to PhDs in sports psychology or the elite athletes in the world and package them so youth coaches, parents, and athletes can learn from them.
You've talked a lot about PCA being about performance. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it really all started, we're all about character, the better people part, but it really started because I saw kids underperforming playing baseball, basketball, and soccer. And so it was about how can we help kids perform better, stay in sports longer, have a better experience. And then once we got into it, I realized there's no better place to teach character. There's this endless procession of teachable moments in sports. Every practice, every game, there's a teachable moment if you're looking for it. So that became, then it was not just performance of athletes, but leaders of youth sports organizations. How can you create a development zone? The larger sports culture, we call it entertainment sports culture. It's about winning, and there's a win-at-all-cost mentality that filters down. Sports as a development zone where the goal is to develop better athletes, better people. So leaders, their performance, coaches as double-O coaches, trying to win, but there's a second more important goal, life lessons. Athletes becoming triple impact competitors who make themselves better, their teammates better, and the game better. So it's really about performance of this system, this ecosystem of sports that can actually produce ethical leaders and positive contributors for our society.
I think what's really interesting is it's one thing to have an idea and kind of this genesis of the idea that you had and to understand the impact it can have. But it's another to get that message out. I mean, it was interesting to hear Jason talk about 50,000 kids just in the Chicago area that are going to be reached by this message through PCA. How have you been able to build it into the success that you have?
Well, I think that it starts with the vision. The people, the coaches who are here tonight, for example, or tonight, I've been on the road a lot. The coaches who are here this morning, I think are here partly because they see the potential in youth sports and what it really could be, how incredible high school and youth sports could be. So that's where we start. That vision then brings people in. Jason Sachs, our executive director here, has done such a great job. Jason could be making a lot more money in the private sector. We have all kinds of people who are involved with this movement because they see this as the kind of impact they want to make with their life.
So what's next?
We just finished a 5-year plan. This is our third 5-year plan in the last 3 years because we keep overshooting our plan. Our plan now is we're in 12 chapters. We're going to be in 26 chapters 5 years from now. That's 3 a year for the next 5 years. There are 40 million kids or so playing high school and youth sports in this country. In 5 years, we will reach 20 million of those, half of them. And if any of you have read Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, when you reach half of the kids in this country and half of the coaches who are doing it directly, you're going to impact the whole system. So that's what we're after. We're going to change the culture of a major institution in this society.
Well, congratulations.
Glad to have your help.
Congratulations on what you've done to this point. It really is incredibly impressive. Jim Thompson, the founder of PCA. Thanks a lot, Jim.
Thanks a lot.
I do want to introduce our panel now. I'm going to start with Mike Brey, who, as I hope many of you know, is the head basketball coach at Notre Dame. There's Coach Brey. I'm looking all around the room. He's right in front of me. Coach Brey's been at Notre Dame since 2000, has had incredible success there, has led Notre Dame to 9 NCAA tournament appearances, 4 of the last 5. We're talking about coaching here today, and you want to talk about someone who's learned from great coaches, two legends. Mike Krzyzewski, when he was an assistant at Duke, that was who the head coach was there, and obviously continues to be, and then Morgan Wooten as well at DeMatha High School. Mike Brey, the head coach of the University of Notre Dame. Next up, I want to introduce Erin Chastain. Erin is the head women's soccer coach at DePaul. Where's Erin? There she is. Thank you. Led them to the NCAA tourney this past year for the first time in a decade. She's been an assistant coach at Santa Clara as well as at Northwestern. She is a Midwest native, grew up in Minnesota. We were talking about the beautiful temperate climate there in Minnesota beforehand. She was an all-Big Ten player at Minnesota. And just in case you're curious, because I was curious, she is the sister-in-law of Brandi Chastain, who, of course, became famous in the Women's World Cup a number of years ago. Erin Chastain. Next up is Chris Collins. Where's Chris? There he is. Chris Collins, the head basketball coach at Northwestern, has had a great first season at NU. Wildcats won 3 straight Big Ten road games for the first time since 1960. They went up to Madison and beat Wisconsin there at the Kohl Center, the first time they've ever done that as a program. And of course, Wisconsin went on to make it to the Final Four. We were talking about Mike Krzyzewski earlier, similar coaching tree for Chris. He spent 13 years as Coach K's assistant at Duke before coming to Northwestern. He's a Chicago area native, went to Glenbrook North High School, was Mr. Basketball here in the state of Illinois. Chris Collins. And finally, I want to introduce Pat Fitzgerald. Hi, Fitz. How are you? Pat is the winningest coach in Northwestern football history. 2 years ago, took them to their first bowl win in more than half a century. He is arguably the best player in Northwestern history, as well was the backbone of the Rose Bowl team in 1995, two-time National Defensive Player of the Year. He's a Chicago native as well, went to Sandburg High School. Pat Fitzgerald. Take your time, Fitz.
Good morning, Dave. Wow, thanks.
All right, guys, let's talk a little bit. I mean, all of you, obviously, you don't get to this point without being extremely involved in athletics from a very young age. And I guess I'm interested, since we're talking about coaching, to find out about some of the coaches early on in your life. And Erin, I want to start with you. As a youth, in youth sports, was there any coach who made a particular impact on you that you recall?
Yeah, I mean, I think starting with my high school coach, he took over a high school program that wasn't very successful in my freshman season, and in our sophomore season, we ended up winning the state championship. And we had the same group of players, but it was a really different approach that he went about teaching us the game, and it was really about, we saw his love of the game every day. He believed in us, and we really felt that at practice and in training, and we still keep in touch to this day. And I think it was that connection that he built with the whole group of us that really kind of helped us get to the next level and helped us all really decide, hey, this is something we want to do and we want to commit to.
How did he build it? I mean, is there something that as a coach you can put a finger on where you say that's something that I still apply today?
I think from a team chemistry standpoint, I think he really started with that and brought us together as a group and built this culture of competitiveness, but also a culture of being great teammates and taking care of your teammates. And I think we've always tried to do that on all the teams that I've been a part of, whether playing at Minnesota or coaching at Santa Clara or coaching at DePaul. I think it's about, first starts with that team chemistry and bringing your group together so that you can play for each other and play for your coaches on the field.
How about for you, Mike? Is there someone early on, we talked about Morgan Wooten, obviously, but
Yeah.
even going further back?
Yeah, started with my parents. My parents are both educators. My mom swam in the '56 Olympics, so we at least have one athlete in the family. And my dad was a high school athletic director, and my mother coached swimming at George Washington when I was finishing up playing there. But as a young person, the dinner table talk was always what they did with their students. And so I was around that. I guess I'm in the family business, so to speak. But then to be handed off to Morgan Wooten, who, you know, arguably was the greatest high school coach and a true teacher and educator and a really positive guy. It was so key for me. I was around him at his basketball camps from age 10 until then. I played for him, and then I went back and coached with him. So he was an amazing mentor as a teacher, a coach, a great communicator, able to interact with young people. Had a great he had a great talent of reading kids and kind of anticipating and he always finished. I always remember him when he coached me, when he interacted with you. If he was demanding or maybe addressing something you didn't do well, he always seemed to follow it up with something positive. And so I was really fortunate around my parents and a Morgan Wooten at a really young age.
Chris, we spent a significant amount of time about a month ago talking, you and your dad and I, at a presentation at Northwestern about the influence he had on you. So I know how significant that was. You've been around coaching your whole life. You can talk about the impact your dad had, and then maybe is there anyone else also who impacted you in that way?
Well, it was interesting. Obviously, like Coach Brey said, growing up, having a father who was a professional athlete and then a coach. But I was one of those kids, I didn't want to hear anything from my dad, even though he was probably the smartest coach I could have had. I took it very personally. So the way I learned from him was by going to his practices and watching him coach others. If he tried to tell me, I couldn't accept it. But, I had the opportunity to go, and when he was coaching the Bulls in the mid-'80s and kind of the rise of the Bulls teams, to be able to go watch those practices and watch him coach others and to see how he connected with those guys and to see how hard they worked was very influential on me, and that kind of carried over into high school. I was blessed to have a wonderful high school coach as well, just like Coach Brey said, Brian James, who was a longtime high school coach in the state of Illinois, and he and I developed a great bond. The thing I appreciated always was, even though my dad was a brilliant basketball guy and a great coach, he never tried to coach me because he understood that I didn't take it well. So he always tried to put me in positions where I had great coaches to teach me the game and to teach me those lessons that we talk about in trying to grow. So my high school coach was a great mentor of mine. He was always a very positive guy, and the thing I take from him more than anything was, as serious as you have to be and as hard as you work and as competitive as it gets, the thing that he kind of showed me is you have to have some fun too. The journey has to be fun, the process has to be fun. And he had a great way of, within the seriousness and within us working hard, always making sure we had fun. And that's why when the first thing I did when I became a head coach last year was to hire my high school coach as my top assistant. So that's what he's meant in my life, and obviously it's a great bond that we share.
How about you, Fitz? Who had the biggest impact on you as a young player?
Well, probably my mom. She signed me up to play football in the second grade. I was that kid that was a daydreamer and didn't pay very good attention in class, and I think you get medicated for that now. So my medicine was football, and thank goodness my mom signed me up. But when I think back, neither one of my parents went to college, and they saw the value in athletics at an early age. My sisters and I were involved, and we just had one family rule: if you start something, you have to finish it. So regardless if I loved football or not, or basketball, whatever it was you're going to start, you're going to finish it for the year. So that carried over into the band and the orchestra. That was a huge mistake as a fourth grader, carrying the bass on the, I was the tallest kid in the school, so I had the bass, and yeah, that wasn't a real smart decision on my part as you think back. And now as a father, I think it was the best thing that ever happened to me. As I look back at my youth, that mentality, no matter what we start, we're going to finish, is kind of been carried over in my life in the way that I teach and the way that I coach. But my high school linebacker coach, a gentleman by the name of Larry Lokank, he's an Illinois High School Hall of Fame coach. He's never been a head coach. He was always an assistant. After I graduated from Carl Sandburg, he moved to Providence Catholic and had a great run, a bunch of state championships with Matt Seffner there at Providence. But my sophomore year, I was going to get bumped up to varsity, but I was kind of a knucklehead, got mono, things of that nature. Ended up not working out great. But at the end of the year, they brought me up to the varsity for a playoff game, and that didn't happen a whole lot back at Sandburg in those days. And from that first week that I worked with him until I graduated, he taught me this great lesson as a teacher and as a father, and now, obviously as a coach, that there's a deeper part of you if you'll just go tap into it. And he saw things in me that I didn't see. And he pushed me in a very positive way, i.e. I had to win every race. I had to come in and work out early in the morning with him when nobody else on my team had to. And I didn't get it. I was a lot like Chris. I didn't understand it when I was that age. And finally, when I was at graduation at Sandburg, I finally asked him, I said, why did you make me do that? Why did you hold me to that standard? He says, because you didn't see it. And hopefully you see it now. And, that power of influence that you have as a parent, that power of influence that you have as a coach is something that can be incredibly impactful to drive a young person to find things that maybe they don't think that they can achieve on their own. And I'm forever indebted to Coach Locane for seeing that in me.
Fitz, I want to go right back to you. You talk a lot about character in coaching. In fact, we had this Big Ten Icons series, and you were named one of the all-time Big Ten icons, and the Northwestern shirt that had the quote from you that said, "Character is what you do when no one else is watching." Give me a sense of the responsibility that you feel like athletes have, NCAA athletes, in terms of being character, generating positive character.
Yeah, Dave, they live in a fishbowl. Like it or not, the world that our student athletes live in today is completely different than everybody's in this room when they were in college, except for maybe a few. I see one of my great former players here, Doug Schimmel. There's one of those it's a fine line right now between having fun, being a normal student, and then actually understanding when I send out a tweet or an Instagram, it's going to go worldwide. And then beyond that, understanding just how that can impact your life professionally. And it's a tough world that they live in right now. And they're held to a very high standard, and they should be. But at the same time, they're young people. They're going to make choices that we've all made that you hope that from a standpoint of who they surround themselves with and being able to look a little bit forward, they really question what they're going to do and really question themselves before they hit send or post or whatever it might be. But it's a tough world for the young people today. And I think more and more kids come from great character because, excuse me, I think the parents have a better awareness level of the realities of not only social media, but also just how hard it is to get to the collegiate and professional level at any sport.
Mike, what do you tell your guys about setting character examples for younger players?
I'm always trying to reinforce, being a great ambassador, for the university, for Notre Dame, and for our basketball program. And as Pat was saying, the social media aspect is a whole new world. And I think a couple years ago, my first reaction was we kind of shut it down. And I didn't think that was part of their development, to part of them growing and being a college student and becoming a young man was, they got to be able to express themselves. You try and coach them up in that sense a little bit. But Pat's so right. I mean, they are out there every day. But I think you're continually, I use the phrase in my program a lot, can you handle your business like a man? And I'll use Pat Connaughton, who just got drafted by the Baltimore Orioles, and thank God he's going to come back and play some hoops for a little more. I'll use him as an example with my younger players. I mean, he's a man. When I start referring to you as a man in our program, then you've arrived. You're handling your academic business the right way. You interact with people on campus the right way. You handle social media the right way. So there's kind of a phrase in our program where I think the young guys go, okay, I want to earn that. I want coach to refer to me as you've become a man in our program.
Erin, kind of taking it from the men to the women, I think it's an interesting responsibility as a father of 3 girls, and you kind of watch to see, well, who are their role models athletically? I mean, I think it's just changed so dramatically. Title IX's had so much to do with it here over the last 40 years or so. What do you tell your young women in your program about the example that they can set for young girls?
Yeah, I mean, it's something we talk about all the time, and I think if you look at some of the higher profile women in sports that have done a wonderful job of that, and then some that have some room to grow in it, and you look at some of the social media things there was a big thing with my sister-in-law and Hope Solo, a kind of a banter back and forth about the 99ers and whether or not, I guess just kind of moving on from the 99ers, and that was Hope Solo's position on it. And I think it's just about using those teachable moments and using real life examples and showing them what harm just a simple comment can make and what example that sets. And I have 2 young daughters, and we talk, my team is around my kids all the time, and they know what's expected of them, and I think they know what's expected of them on road trips and how to be professional and to say thank you to our bus driver and to say thank you to everyone who touches our program, because we get all that support. So I think it's constantly having a dialogue about it and constantly kind of being an extension of our athletic department and our staff, and recognizing that anything they do is going to impact me, and it's going to impact DePaul, and it's going to impact women's soccer, and I think they do a wonderful job of that. And part of that's, we recruit kids from good families, and their parents set a wonderful example, and they get to us, and we need to guide them and show them, but I think they're well prepared to do that when they come into our program.
Chris, we're talking here about setting character examples, the players setting them for young players. How about your responsibility as a coach? I mean, I think especially with college coaching, it's kind of a cult of personality. I mean, we look at these guys, and Mike Krzyzewski's obviously a great example. Rick Pitino, you kind of go on and on. Cal Perry. These are the guys who people look to as they are the program. They are the face of the program. And so as a coach, when you're on the sidelines, what's the message in your behavior you can send to youth coaches about how they should be comporting themselves?
Well, I think all of us sitting up here, we all feel very fortunate to do what we do. It's something we love, but also to be in a position to make such an impact. That's what you get on the collegiate level, even way more than being on a professional level. Or, I think in high school and college, those are the 2 opportunities where young people can be really molded the best, and you really see the most growth. So, I think us as coaches, everything we do, I mean, Coach Fitz was talking about it, everything is more magnified now. Every game is on TV, everything is streamed, everything you say in the media, everything you tweet, so the example starts with us, the way we carry ourselves. Doesn't mean you're not going to get angry sometimes, and we're all human, and I think that's part of it too. I think for your players to realize, like, even though we're coaches and we have a lot of experience and we do what we do, we make mistakes also. I call a lot of bad plays, I make bad substitutions. I may say something that later I feel like I should have said in another way, and I think as coaches we're all most critical of ourselves. But right now in our society, with especially all 4 of us, everything we do, we have to set a positive example, and the young kids are watching, and it's such a trickle down effect. I was just talking with the people at our table, even the guys in our level of college, they look up to the guys at the pro level, and I was talking about what a great example, watching how San Antonio, watching them play, but also how they carry themselves. I mean, the thing I watched last night, and I know I'm off tangent, but the thing that was the coolest thing to me was, they win, and you have 3 guys that are probably going to be Hall of Famers. Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, 3 of the best that have ever played. Well, the MVP of the series was this young guy, Kawhi Leonard. And when they announced that Kawhi Leonard was the MVP of the series, did you guys see how his teammates reacted? I mean, that just showed what a special culture they have.
It's such a physical game, and you need your guys to kind of play in that physical manner, and there's a culture that's grown up around it. How difficult is it to reconcile the idea of the positive coaching with the need for your guys to be really physical and aggressive?
Well, you can be physical and aggressive and still be positive. There's no disconnect there. But there's only so many times that you can have that physical aspect within what you do practice-wise in our game. And instead of looking necessarily at the outcome, we talk a lot about the process and how we're going to go about being fundamentally safe, technically safe, and execute what we're doing in the game the proper way. And so that's how we really put our focus. And then, a big part of it's recruiting. You get young men that like to be coached at an up-tempo pace. You get young men that as Chris alluded to, I was kind of the same way, but like to be coached. I mean, that's kind of a lost art with kids today. You know, a lot of kids, you know, they can just Google it and find out how to do your job as a coach. I mean, there's enough videos out there. They know how to shoot better, throw better, catch better, tackle better. So, you know, you've got to do a really good job, I think, in the front end, bringing the right people in. But we really try to coach our guys up. You know, we look at every opportunity, and Jim alluded to it earlier. I mean, every opportunity at a football practice is a teachable and coachable moment. I mean, there's so many working parts. There's 22 on the field at one time. There's, you know, 9 different assistant coaches plus myself. There's a lot of working parts, and every little detail matters. And, you know, when you look at it from that standpoint, if you look at it from a foundational aspect of teaching the game, teaching it safe, showing them how to do the right technique, and then gluing all that together with a passion and an effort level, I think that it brings an environment of a lot of fun. And if you do it the other way around, I think you're really just trying to motivate out of fear. And I don't think kids really respond to that very well. It'll only get a kid so far, and then they'll shut down. We look at the other way around. If you let us coach you, we're going to coach you up and take you where you can't take yourself. And, you know, I mentioned that earlier, but that's kind of the philosophy behind what we do.
Part of PCA, and in reading about it as I have in the last couple of weeks, is this idea of instilling a culture, that this is kind of how we're going to be as a program. And I think it's probably even more challenging when you take over a program that isn't in great shape. And Erin, I know you had to do that. How do you go about getting your culture into place when things haven't been going all that well?
Yeah, I mean, I think as Fitz was alluding to and saying, it's a lot about recruiting and recruiting the type of student athlete that you know is going to work with your philosophy and what you value. And I know for me that means they're blue collar and they're hardworking and they're fit and they're tough and they can handle critical feedback given in a positive way. So I think it started with recruiting for me, but it also started with just believing in the kids. And I think I walked into a program that these kids were broken down and they didn't believe they could win games. And, you know, we were able to kind of make progress every year and get better every year. And they knew I believed in them. And it was an adjustment for me. I mean, I had to be really patient, and that wasn't a strong suit for me coming from a really top program at Santa Clara. I came to our first practice and we did a fitness test and we trained, and I was like, whoa, what did I sign up for? I didn't know we were in that bad a shape. But then it was about adjusting my mentality and saying, well, listen, I didn't come here to be good right now. I came here to get better each year. And that's what we've been able to do, and it's been incredibly fun to be a part of a group of women that knows that their staff believes in them and puts it out there every single day. And you know, I think we do some critical feedback, but I also think, you know, when Fitz was talking, I was thinking about this kid that I had on my team that, you know, for a couple years, she just wasn't fit, but she was super talented and she was a starter. And I felt like, gosh, if she just got fitter, she would be so good. And I was on her a lot. Come on, gotta be better, gotta be better. And finally, in her junior year, I said, I'm not gonna do that anymore. I'm just gonna ignore the fitness part, just leave her alone. And then she suddenly got fit. And I was like, why didn't I do that earlier? She would have been better in her sophomore year. But so I think it's sometimes you think getting on the kid is gonna maybe push them, but if you just leave an area alone and focus on what she does really well, then she doesn't shut down. And that was a big lesson for me as a young coach that I learned. And now I think I won't make that mistake again. But it's been a fun process to go in and rebuild and kind of watch our program grow.
Chris, I know you were in a similar situation this past year. How did you go about instilling a new culture in Northwestern basketball?
Well, again, I think so much when you start something new, you can't skip steps. You have to build a foundation, and you have to build a foundation which you believe in, and then more importantly, your players have to believe in it. So a very similar situation what Erin was saying. The thing I came in is, the first thing is I wanted to build up their confidence. There's a great story. I have a young 7-footer on my team, and I know he has talent. You know, good footwork, good skills. He's a big guy, 7 feet, 270 pounds, and is a great kid. But he was just beaten down with confidence. You know, the team had lost, I think, their last 10 games. He was kind of thrown into the fire and really was beaten down when I came in. Every time I saw him walking around, he'd have his head down and his shoulders slumped and wouldn't look you in the eye, and you could just tell he was beaten down. So, I made it kind of my mission with him to try to build his confidence. And I actually had him every time the first month I was on the job. Every time I saw him, I made him look me in the eye and tell me he was a beast. And things like that, they may sound a little corny or a little cheesy, but I made him, and then he started saying it with more conviction, and then he would add some adjectives to it, before it.
You care to share any of those with us?
No. And by the end of the season, he was scoring 20 points, getting 10 rebounds, and now if you watch him, he's standing up straight. You really see he's 7 feet tall, and just the power of confidence and the power and belief. And to me, that's growth. So that's something you can't really measure in wins and losses, but you're making progress. And I think with us, and I think the foundation of training hard, of playing hard, of practicing hard, of being prepared. Those are foundational things that, as you get more talented, as you grow and become better, those are things that you want your pillars, that you want your program to stand on. So, those were the things we really focused on. And, I think even though our record wasn't what we all aspire it to be, you see a lot of progress when you see those things starting to take shape. And now it's important because we have 5 freshmen coming in this year. So, everyone's going to talk about the young guys and talent coming in and all that. But to me, the most important guys are the guys coming back, because they're the ones that now know, how our program is run. And they're the one, not me. They're the ones that can hold these young guys accountable. And like Coach Brey was saying, that expectation of how things are done in our program.
Coach Brey, I want to turn to you now, and I think there's been a lot of talk, particularly in basketball, and you and Chris could speak to this, about the AAU culture, and I've had some coaches say to me privately how destructive they think it is, and that a lot of the things we're talking about here with PCA, that's not necessarily happening at the AAU level. What kind of evolution have you seen here in, let's say, the last 15 years, and how have you had to deal with it as a college coach?
It's funny when our founder was up here talking earlier, you were interviewing him and he was talking about the overdose of confidence. I immediately thought of our summer culture, Chris, and the AAU culture, and where at times I feel it's getting a little bit better, then sometimes you get a little discouraged. In July, we'll be in it full swing, Chris and I, on 3-4 day weekends watching kids play. It's a big part. You got to manage it. You got to maneuver it, because it's a big part of us surviving in our jobs. But you look and you watch sometimes and you say, I just wish the person running that program was a little more of an educator. That's what we've lost in the basketball culture. We're recruiting a lot through. We're not going through a guidance counselor anymore. I miss going into the high schools to talk to a coach and to talk to an English teacher. We don't do that as much anymore. And from what I understand, football's getting a little bit like that, Fitz, with this 7-on-7 and teams traveling around. And a couple of our football coaches told me that. They're getting into our world. But it is part of the equation. I think it's been attacked a couple times by the Coaches Association and the NCAA. But I think right now, because of Adidas, Nike, and now Under Armour, a huge player, it's a culture that will be out there, and you try and maneuver it.
So what do you do? How do you maneuver? How do you take a kid who maybe hasn't had the kind of coaching or guidance that you want him to have, and what do you do?
Well, I think you have to look at it, and if he's in a summer program that's a little bit poisonous, I think you have to make the evaluation. Obviously, if you're thinking about him, he's a really good player, and he can. And you say, can you manage him? Can I manage him in our culture? We have a little more of an established culture. I've been there 14 years. Can he fit in? Can he fit into the culture at Notre Dame? I think those are the things that when I'm out in the summer, I'm really trying to figure out. Maybe the situation he is not very positive, but if he gets around us, and we're pretty good teachers, can he grow? Can he get better? I mean, the other thing that's really interesting to watch is the parent situation too. I mean, it is intense. I think back to what Morgan Wooten, who I played for, he used to use this line to open every coaching clinic, and it was a true line. He said his first coaching job was his favorite, St. Joe's Orphanage. And that's usually the reaction. It's like a delayed 5-second reaction. And the high school coaches go, "You're right about that." You know? And but it's all part of the equation now. But that's our culture. And I think when you're evaluating, when Chris and I are evaluating this summer, you're trying to figure out, okay, that may not be the best environment that young man's playing in, but what if we have him in ours? And I think a lot of times we have been able to rehab them, and there's times we haven't. Right. And that's the roll of the dice.
It's interesting you bring up the parenting component of it, because I think most of us who are sitting here, we might not necessarily have, I'll speak for myself, I don't think I have any scholarship athletes in my family, but I have a lot of kids, I have 3 kids who really like playing youth sports. What would your advice be for me and for the other people out here who are parents as to how to handle the relationship with your kids when you're watching them play, and how to handle that relationship with the coaches so you don't end up being the one Morgan Wooten wishes the kid didn't have a parent around? What would your advice be for us?
I think you go right back to the theme that's been talked a lot about is being a confidence giver as a parent. And that's a phrase I've started to use in our program the last 5 years. Be a confidence giver when we're interacting with these kids, whether it's an academic issue, a basketball issue, what Chris, the individual interaction with his big guy is just super stuff. But can you do that with your young man? And then can you be hands-off enough, find the right coaches? Chris used his dad as a great example, finding him good coaching situations because he knew, he couldn't get to them. Can you put him in those situations? And then can you be secure enough to be hands-off? I think it's amazing the coaching that gets done when the kid gets in the car. And one of whatever positive things can be maybe have been done in the high school setting can be undone quickly. We're a little bit isolated from that because we have them, and we also pay their tuition. We also I had a situation with a parent, and I try not to meet with them about playing time, but we had some other issues and kind of really came at you, was very confrontational in this, and my son, I said, well, let me start out by saying, I'm paying $60,000 a year for your son to attend Notre Dame. Usually that backs them up at least one step, but they're part of the equation. Like, I want my assistants checking in with the parents. They each have a couple parents. I want them checking in once every 2 weeks because I want to know the vibe and what's going on. And we're telling Jimmy one thing: get a feel, check Dad's temperature. What do we got going out there? Because that's all part of the group dynamic over a long season.
What about from your point of view, Erin, as parents, what is the advice you give us in terms of dealing with our kids?
Well, I think the confidence building is wonderful, and that's as long as you also recognize that at the same time you can't let your child know that they're God's gift to the sport. And I think that entitlement is something really common in youth sports right now. So as much as you want to say, hey, that was great, I think what you need to praise is the effort and praise those controllable factors, and also send a clear message to your child that, they have a lot of room to grow and a lot of room to get better. And at the same time, praise the good things that they do. But certainly, I think we've all probably seen that level of entitlement of younger players where something doesn't go their way on a youth team and their parent immediately says, well, let's look for another team. That didn't go well, let's look to switch. And I think that's not the right message to send your child about being able to recover when things don't go well. And I think we all probably see that a lot. So I think it's being realistic with your child about, you know, not where they could go. Like, I think you probably might have a scholarship athlete in the future for you of one of your kids. You can't possibly know that yet.
You need to come out and watch them. I got a softball game tonight. We'll see you in Oak Park. Yeah.
I like the level of realism, but you know, so you believe in your child, but you also teach them that they have such a big ladder to grow, and it's vertical, and you know, you can still be really positive about it, but certainly not that entitlement, and I think that's a battle.
Same question for both you, Chris, and you, Pat. I'm just interested in the advice you give to parents.
Well, the only other thing I would add to that is I think it's important for kids to have balance in their life. You know, so much to me I think is way too much, way too soon. You know, you look at high school kids now, and their games are on national TV, and they have 1 million Twitter followers. You know, it's too much. And when the thing that I don't like is I see young kids giving up other activities at too young of an age because of the dream. You know, that everyone feels their kid's going to be a pro, and that's great. I mean, I'm all for the positive, but you know, I think there's so much more to be learned, and so much more when, you know, I know for me, I learned a lot from playing other sports, because you know, basketball was something maybe I excelled at, but when I played baseball, I was good, but I wasn't the best player. So I felt it helped me in basketball because I understood what it was then like to be the role guy or not the best player. You know, in baseball, I was the guy who, you know, had to try to get on base and not make mistakes. And in basketball, maybe I was the guy who was the best player. So I think it helped me in becoming a better teammate. Because I had balance, you know, trying to, you know, my parents always made me have pockets of time where I got away from basketball, whether it be for a couple weeks or a month, or because it's just healthy. You know, you know, so many parents I think feel like, you know, that you got to be playing AAU all year long. You can't miss one game. You can't miss one tournament. You can't, or you're going to be left behind, and that's just not true. You know, there's a lot of good now. There's so many good programs out there. There's a lot of good coaches. There's some negative things. There's some things we don't like. But I think it's very important for kids to have balance in their life at a young age, and not to put too much on them too soon, because they still are kids.
We had the same conversation at our table over breakfast, and so I'm not going to do anything but I totally agree with what's been said. But I've got 9, 7, and 5 right now, 3 little boys playing sports, and a little bit of a different twist that my wife and I are working on right now. We're really trying to teach our little guys how to say please and thank you to their coach. You know, after the game, they say thanks to their coach, and how to be a great teammate. And then we're also teaching them the responsibility of where their stuff needs to be in the house. And it's important that they have their gear ready to go when it's time to leave. And all those little things that really have nothing to do with the outcome of the game. And my wife is a phenomenal teacher of that. And so we have expectations of what time we have to leave, when we're going to leave. We're going to clean up, help the coach after practice clean up, say thank you, and be on our way, and then be a great teammate while we're there. And you know, especially we just wrapped up baseball season, and you know, little kids, it's a hard, slow sport. Like 4 kids can hit and a bunch can't, you know, and like 2 kids can throw and 1 kid can catch, and it's like 12 degrees, and you know, dad's looking at mom saying, "Why are we here?" You know, but just to be a great teammate and get up on the fence and cheer for your buddy and learn what it means to be a teammate. And that's more important to us right now. You know, I've got a great relationship with Joe Girardi, and the Yanks were in town here a couple weeks ago, and one of the questions, I had Joe's ear for about 3 minutes, and I said, all right, we're before All-Star break, and we have over 20 guys with Tommy John injuries. How in the world is that happening? And he said, it's easy. Kids don't have the balance. Kids are throwing way too much at way too early of an age. There's only so many throws in your arm, and it's eventually going to go out. The mound hasn't changed. The distance hasn't changed. The volume, the inability to play other sports and have balance in your life has changed. And these kids aren't great. They're great, but they're done. You know, and maybe 1 or 2 will come back, but these are the best of the best that are now throwing their arms out. And that's just one microcosm, I think, of what's wrong with sports today. You know, we're not going to specialize in the Fitzgerald household. We're going to do everything. And if they want to do it, we're going to try it. We're going to do it for a year. And if they're great, great. If they're not, great. Just have fun and enjoy it, and become a better person through sports. And, you know, that's what I think parents need, in my humble opinion, You need to look at by using sports as a vehicle to teach your kids about growing up and being a good person, and sharing in your community with your friendships instead of being the best player, getting a scholarship. All those things will happen if you're lucky enough. If you work hard, if you got a great attitude, and you're fortunate enough to grow in the sport, all those things will happen.
Great stuff. I think that's a really good place to end it. I do want to open it up, though, for a few minutes here to questions. If we have any, just raise your hand and fire away. Yes, way in the back.
Everyone in this room understands how important it is that kids have good role models to coach. But there's no easy way to measure character. How do you know you've done a good job?
You want to handle that? Erin, you want to take that one?
Yeah, we're like, I don't know if you've done a good job. I mean, I think you mean as a coach?
Yeah. We're talking about building better athletes and making better people. Your kids leave the court, they leave the field, their whole lives are ahead of them. How do you know you succeeded?
Yeah, I'll use an example, and it happened on Friday. We have graduation at DePaul, and we had a wonderful senior class and 6 bright, motivated young women from all different areas. And one of our seniors from London was leaving, and she doesn't come from anything. So the prospect of her coming back to the States just to kind of pop in or come to alumni day is really, really low. So we had to say goodbye on Friday, and she gave me a hug and said, "You will never know how much this meant to me." And we both were very emotional, and I even get emotional now, and that goes back to what Chris was saying about we're human, so we get emotional, and that's okay. But when I gave her a hug, I knew we did a good job, because when she came in as a freshman and now when she left, the growth that the kid has had from an on and off the field perspective was just amazing. And her appreciation for the opportunity that she had and that we gave her was unbelievable. And I felt it in her hug and her tears. And I got an email from her yesterday that she's back and, playing in London. And I just couldn't have been prouder. So I don't know if there's tangible things that can say you did a good job, but I know if you put every ounce of your being into a kid, I think you can tell that they're leaving a better person and a better player, and I think that's the goal.
About have time for one or two more here. Yes.
Bob Muzikowski, Chicago. What about 80% of our kids are single parent? Many of them wouldn't know their father if he walked in the room. What about those kids? Because I hear everybody talking about recruiting the family, recruiting the good family who has a schedule on the refrigerators. Easy. What about Mike? I know you got some kids like that. What about working with those kids versus the kids from the dorm?
Yeah, I have one right now, a local kid who is a foster family raised him, Demetrius Jackson, and I think you're sensitive to the single parent situations and situations like that, and you just naturally develop a deeper relationship with them, and you do feel you have to become that father figure and spend time with them talking about things other than their crossover dribble or how they played the night before. I try and grab our guys in places other than my office, because the office is always kind of a position of power, and so I'll try and meet them in the dining hall for breakfast or at a place where we can get a smoothie and just talk. If it gets to basketball, great. But I think you and your again, we have a staff that helps us with that, but I think you have to be much more sensitive to that and create. I think all of us here probably all have our programs created in a family atmosphere where that young person can feel like, boy, I never really got that at home, but I'm getting that here, and it's really powerful. Another good Morgan Wootenism, and the guy's brilliant. He always used to say, young people, they'll forget their teachers, but they'll never forget their coach. The platforms and the different areas we get to interact with them is just such a powerful setting. And my first recruit is now on Chris Collins' staff. He's a spy, Chris Quinn. But no. But I can remember taking him to lunch on his 21st birthday. And it was his 21st birthday, but his mother and father were also going through a divorce, and he got the news on his 21st birthday. And so the role of coach, we didn't talk about anything with his individual workout or playing West Virginia 2 nights later, those things. And now I've been in a place 14 years. I have a lot of guys that come back and they'll say, Coach, do you remember when you said, and you know you don't, but like it had an unbelievable impact. So everything, anytime you're in those settings, to be really prepared and understand the impact you have.
I think we have time for one more question right in the back here.
I'm Jeff Meyer from the Chicagoland Youth Football League. I want to thank Fitz for everything he does for all our kids in the community and all you guys. But here's my question. For us, for me, every weekend, half the teams win, half the teams lose. We have about 400 football teams participating. Today's entitlement society, like Erin alluded to earlier, was that they expect to win. And if they don't, either the other team must have cheated, the refs blew the game, or the league rules stink. For you guys, how do you keep, because of the pressure you guys are under, because of the how much further you're up, how do you keep that pressure off of your players, of what your pressure is?
Well, we try to focus on what we can control. And that's how we talk to our young men all the time. There's so many mitigating factors that go into a football game, let alone a football week. We have 12 opportunities in the fall, that's it, to get into the postseason. They're kind of analyzed and scrutinized just a little bit. And it's amazing how the perception of what your program is goes down to that 3-hour window every Saturday, and how each game is kind of its own one-game season, if that makes sense. And so when you really, especially today with social media, with the way technology is, we have our own network that covers our 14 teams.
Quite well, I might add.
That's just serving volley, you're welcome. But at any rate, frankly, that's what we try to do, focus on what we can control, and that's a great challenge. I mean, that is a huge challenge, but, at the end of the day, if we play well enough, those things should not matter. If we execute, if we do what we're capable of, we play together as a team, it should not matter. And when we get together then and we analyze the game, that's how we coach our guys. We don't look at, well, wow, look at that bad call in the third quarter, that's what cost us the game. We don't talk to our guys that way. If it was a bad holding call, our O-line coach will go, well, if you had your hands inside earlier in the game, it probably wouldn't have gotten called. And you use it as a teachable and coachable moment. Now, if a play is blown by an official or we make a bad call as a coach, it's going to be so blown up in the media anyways, it doesn't matter. All right, so, there he goes tooting his own horn again. I mean, they're going to, it's going to be your fault. So we worry about what we can control. And again, that's a great challenge. And for little kids, what does that mean? Or younger kids, I think that's teaching the parents. Because they're the worst. And I go to the football games, and I don't get a chance to go to all of them, but I'm sitting there, and I want to smack some of these parents, because little Joey and John, they're listening. And where they're really listening is a car ride home when you're talking to your significant other. And, I get together with some of my kids' parents, and I'm like, do you understand what your kids are hearing from you right now? Really, you shouldn't be talking to them, in my opinion, that way, because they're listening, and now they're going to formulate their opinion that way. If you feel that way, then good. Talk about it when you guys are, having your quiet time as a mom and dad. But with the kids, their ears are open, their eyes are open, and they're going to emulate and they're going to follow whatever that family structure is and the path that you create. And I think you have to be very sensitive of that, and especially at the youth coaching level. You coach the kids. Don't worry about the things that are out of your control.
I wish we had time for more. It's such a fabulous panel. I want to thank them all for giving their time, because I think we all learned an awful lot here. Mike Brey, Erin Chastain, Chris Collins, Pat Fitzgerald. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks. Thank you.
It's funny, Mike was talking a little bit about having players coming back and saying, well, do you remember this moment? And you say, no, I don't. It made an impact on them. I think back to a moment when I was in college. I was talking about, maybe my kids don't necessarily have scholarship athlete ability, although, as Erin said, maybe they do. If they don't, the fault lies right here. And I remember a particular moment in college. I went to the Sports and Aquatic Center at Northwestern playing a little pickup basketball. And, his team comes out on the court next, and we match up with people, and I end up matched up with this young woman who I had never seen in my life. And I I didn't really know, I'd never guarded a girl in a game, so I didn't really know what to do, so I kind of backed off her a little bit, and she drained a long jumper over me, and as we're going back down the court, she says, you can guard me. And so then I went out and guarded her, and she blew right past me and got a basket. And I think she scored a couple more times. I just switched off of her, and someone else guarded her. Not very effectively, I might add. That young woman's name was Tracy Williams. It is now Tracy Benford. She played basketball at Northwestern, is now a managing director at Goldman Sachs, and she's very active in PCA here in Chicago. So I want to introduce her for some closing remarks.
Exaggeration. Exactly what happened. All right. Well, I'll take it anyway, as long as there's no film. Well, thank you all for coming. I mean, I want to thank the panelists first. What an incredible, I read about you guys and I see you on TV, but when I hear you speak, it just gives me hope for the future. And I hope that my kids, even though mine are genetically ruined by their father, or my husband's genes. I just joke about that. But I hope that they get an opportunity to be coached by some of the kids that you guys have coached, because I think what you're doing is moving forward and you're paying forward the gift of coaching and good coaching and building better people. So thank you for that. My name is Tracy Benford, and I am a proud founding member of the PCA Board of Chicago. PCA, I got involved in PCA because I knew Jim Thompson from Stanford, but what I really got involved in is sports made such a big difference in my life, and I know everyone in this room has made a difference in their life, not only building the culture of success, but building character. And I think that we all know, and we've heard about a little bit from parents or coaches, a negative experience can ruin that. It can ruin it. And that, thank you for coming. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to any of the PCA board members or Jason or Jim. Thank you.
Thank you.